The sun was slowly setting as Amara Kibet sat in the back seat of the car, watching the beautiful roads of Kenya pass by through the window. It was supposed to be a happy family road trip. Her father Daniel was driving, her mother Ruth was laughing beside him, and her brother Malik was joking around like always. For a moment, Amara felt like she finally belonged. Malik was telling funny stories and everyone was laughing. Amara smiled quietly, hoping this trip would be different. She wanted to believe that maybe her family finally saw her the same way they saw Malik. After hours of driving, they stopped at a highway rest stop near Nakuru. Daniel parked the car and looked back at Amara with a smile. "Amara, go get us some coffee. We'll be right here," he said. "5 minutes only," Ruth added while laughing. Amara smiled and got out of the car. She walked toward the small shop, thinking about what coffee everyone wanted. She even smiled to herself because for once, she felt useful. She came back a few minutes later, holding the cups in her hands. But the smile disappeared from her face. The parking spot was empty. The car was gone. Her family was gone. Amara stood there frozen, looking around, waiting for someone to jump out and say it was just a joke. "Dad," she called softly. No answer. "Mom." Only the sound of passing cars filled the air. At that moment, Amara didn't know it yet, but those 5 minutes would change her entire life forever. Amara stood in the middle of the rest stop parking area, still holding the coffee cups in her hands. Her mind refused to accept what she was seeing. She looked left and right, hoping the car would appear from somewhere. Maybe they had to move the car, she whispered to herself. Maybe Dad got a call. Maybe something happened. She tried to stay calm because she didn't want to believe the worst. These were her parents, the people who raised her, the people she trusted more than anyone. Minutes turned into an hour. The coffee in her hands became cold. The sun started going down, and the busy rest stop slowly became quieter. Amara kept staring at the road, waiting for the familiar car to come back. Every time a vehicle entered the parking lot, her heart jumped, but every time it was someone else. She called her father's phone again and again. No answer. She called her mother. Nothing. First she thought maybe their phones were dead. Maybe they were looking for her. Maybe they were scared too. But deep inside, a painful feeling was growing. Why would they leave without saying anything? Why would they leave her alone? Hours passed, and Amara finally sat down on a bench near the rest stop. Her eyes were full of tears, but she kept fighting them back. She didn't want to cry. She didn't want strangers to see how broken she felt. Then an older man who worked nearby noticed her sitting there for so long. He slowly walked toward her. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked. Amara quickly wiped her tears. "My family, they left to get something. I think they're coming back," she said, even though her voice sounded unsure. The man looked uncomfortable. He stayed quiet for a moment before saying, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I think you should know." Amara looked at him. "What?" The man took a deep breath. "I saw your family here earlier. They weren't worried. They were laughing." Amara's face changed. "What do you mean?" The man looked down sadly. "I heard them talking near the car. Your brother was laughing and your parents were joking about it." Amara's hands started shaking. "What did they say?" The man hesitated, then quietly answered. "They said, 'Let's see how long it takes her to get home.'" Those words hit Amara harder than anything. For a few seconds she couldn't even breathe. She wanted to believe it wasn't true. She wanted to believe there was some misunderstanding. But suddenly, every ignored birthday, every moment she felt less important than Malik, every time she wondered why her parents treated her differently, came rushing back. The people she loved had not forgotten her. They had chosen to leave her. And the worst part was, they were laughing while doing it. As Amara sat alone at the rest stop, the stranger's words kept repeating in her mind. "Let's see how long it takes her to get home." The more she thought about it, the more painful memories started coming back. Maybe this hadn't started today. Maybe it had been happening her entire life. Growing up, Amara always felt different inside her own home. She loved her family deeply, but there was always a feeling she could never explain. It was like she was standing outside a window, watching everyone else belong while she struggled to fit in. Her brother Malik was always the center of attention. When Malik got average grades in school, Daniel and Ruth celebrated him. When Amara brought home top grades, they would simply nod and say, "Good job." When birthdays came, Malik received expensive gifts, new clothes, and everything he asked for. Amara usually got whatever was left. As a little girl, she tried not to notice. She kept telling herself that her parents loved her the same way. But children notice more than adults realize. She noticed how quickly her parents rushed to help Malik whenever he had a problem. She noticed how proudly they talked about him to relatives. She noticed how family photos always seemed to revolve around him. And she noticed how often she felt invisible. Still, Amara never stopped trying. Every achievement became another chance to earn their love. She worked harder in school. She helped around the house without being asked. She took care of chores while Malik relaxed. Whenever guests visited, she did everything she could to make her parents proud. She kept hoping that one day they would look at her the same way they looked at her brother. One memory hurt more than all the others. When she was 14, she won an important school competition. It was one of the happiest days of her life. She came home carrying her certificate, excited to share the news. But when she walked through the door, nobody was paying attention. Malik had scored a goal at a local football match that same day. The entire evening became a celebration for him. Her certificate stayed in her backpack. Nobody even asked to see it. That night, Amara cried quietly in her room, telling herself that next time she would do even better. Maybe then they would notice her. Maybe then she would finally be enough. But now, sitting alone at a highway rest stop, she was finally forced to face a truth she had spent years avoiding. No matter how hard she worked, no matter how much she achieved, no matter how desperately she tried to earn their approval, it was never enough. And for the first time in her life, Amara wondered if the problem had never been her at all. The sky slowly turned dark, and the busy highway that once felt normal now felt like the loneliest place in the world. Amara was still sitting near the rest stop, hoping that at any moment she would hear her father's car coming back. But deep down she already knew. They were not coming. She checked her phone again. The screen turned on for only a few seconds before going completely black. No battery. She pressed the power button again and again, hoping for a miracle. Nothing. Her hands started shaking as she looked around. She had no money, no phone, no ride home, no one to call. For the first time in her life, Amara truly felt alone. She walked over to an old roadside bench and sat down. The cold air touched her face as she hugged herself, trying to stay strong. But she couldn't anymore. The tears she had been holding back all day finally came out. She cried quietly, asking herself the same questions again and again. Why would they do this to me? What did I do wrong? Was I really that easy to leave behind? She remembered all the times she tried to make her parents proud. All the times she defended them when others noticed how differently they treated her. She always told herself, "They love me. They're just different." But tonight, sitting alone on that highway, she couldn't lie to herself anymore. The people she trusted the most had made her feel the most worthless. The people who were supposed to protect her had become the reason she was afraid. Amara looked at the empty road in front of her. Earlier that morning, she was sitting in a car with her family, thinking she was safe. Now she was sitting alone, wondering how she would survive the night. A part of her still hoped her parents would come back. A part of her still wanted to believe it was all a mistake. But another part of her knew the truth. They didn't forget her. They didn't lose her. They left her. And that realization hurt more than the cold night, more than the empty highway, more than being alone. Because Amara finally understood something she never wanted to accept. Sometimes the people you expect to save you are the same people you have to save yourself from. The highway was almost empty now. The bright lights from passing cars were the only thing breaking the darkness. Amara was still sitting on the old bench, holding her arms around herself. Her tears had slowed down, but the pain inside her was still growing. She didn't know what to do next. She had spent her whole life believing her family would always be there for her. But tonight she had learned the hardest lesson. Sometimes the people you trust the most can hurt you the most. A few minutes later, a car slowed down near the rest stop. Amara quickly looked up. Her heart jumped for a second, thinking maybe it was her family coming back. But it wasn't. A man stepped out of the car and looked around. His name was Elias Okoro. He had been driving down the highway when he noticed Amara sitting there alone for hours. Something about the way she looked worried him. He slowly walked toward her, keeping a respectful distance. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Amara quickly wiped her face and looked away. "I'm fine," she replied. But her voice showed she wasn't. Elias looked at the empty road and then back at her. "You've been here for a long time. Do you need help?" Amara immediately became nervous. After what happened, trusting anyone felt impossible. The same people who told her they loved her had abandoned her without a second thought. So why should she believe a stranger? "No, thank you," she said quietly. "I'll figure it out." Elias noticed the fear in her eyes. He didn't push her. He didn't ask too many questions. He simply sat on the other side of the bench, leaving space between them. After a moment he said, "Someone hurt you." Amara looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because people who are just lost look confused," Elias answered. "But people who have been betrayed look like they're trying to understand why it happened." Those words broke something inside Amara. She looked down and tried not to cry again. "My family left me here," she finally whispered. Elias was shocked. "They left you?" Amara nodded. "They called it a joke." For a moment, Elias didn't say anything. He could see how much those words hurt her. Then he calmly said, "Amara, not everyone leaves you behind." She looked at him unsure. It was a simple sentence. But after everything she had been through, it was the first kind thing she had heard all night. Elias offered her some water and told her she didn't have to trust him immediately. "I'm not here to replace your family," he said. "I'm just someone who saw a person who needed help." For the first time since the car disappeared, Amara felt a small piece of hope. Maybe her story wasn't ending on that highway. Maybe it was only beginning. Elias didn't leave Amara alone on that highway. He could see she was scared, confused, and broken, but he also saw something else in her eyes. A person who was hurt, but still fighting. He offered to take her to a safe place where she could rest for the night. Amara hesitated at first. After what her family had done, trusting anyone felt dangerous. But Elias never forced her. He simply said, "You don't have to tell me everything tonight. Just let me help you get somewhere safe." For the first time that night, someone cared about what happened to her. Amara finally agreed. Elias took her to a small guest room where she could sleep. It wasn't a big place, but it was warm and peaceful. That night, Amara cried herself to sleep. Not because she was weak, because she was finally letting go of years of pain. The next morning, she woke up with a difficult truth. Her old life was gone. There was no family waiting for her. No comfortable home to return to. No one to tell her everything would be okay. She had to start over. And that's exactly what she did. Amara found a small job at a local shop. The work was tiring and the pay was not much, but she was grateful. Every morning she woke up early. Every night she came home exhausted. She lived in a tiny room with simple furniture, but she kept it clean and filled it with small reminders that her life could still become something better. There were days when she wanted to give up. Days when she remembered her parents laughing as they drove away. Days when she wondered why the people who were supposed to love her chose to hurt her. But every time those thoughts came, she reminded herself, "I survived that night. I can survive anything." Slowly, Amara started rebuilding herself. She began learning new skills. She watched, listened, and worked harder than anyone around her. She had always been creative, but nobody in her family had ever taken the time to notice. Until one day someone finally did. Her name was Nia Wanjiru. Nia was visiting the shop where Amara worked when she noticed something unusual. While arranging products, Amara had created a beautiful display that caught everyone's attention. It was simple, but it showed creativity and a strong understanding of what people liked. Nia looked at it carefully. "Did you make this?" she asked. Amara looked nervous. "Yes, I just thought it would look better this way." Nia smiled. "Most people only see what is there. You see what it could become." Those words stayed with Amara, because for the first time in her life, Someone saw her, not as Malik's sister, not as the daughter who was never enough, but as Amara, person with talent, person with a future. After meeting Nia, Amara's life slowly started changing. For years, she had been hiding her ideas because nobody ever gave her the chance to show what she could do. But Nia saw something in her that even Amara had forgotten. She saw talent. Nia started teaching her about business, planning, and how to turn a simple idea into something bigger. First, Amara was scared. "What if I fail?" she asked one day. Nia smiled and replied, "Failure is not the end. It's how you learn what works." Those words stayed with Amara. For the first time, someone believed in her before she had anything to prove. Amara started small. She used her creativity to design products that were different from everything else in the market. She paid attention to details. She listened to what people wanted. And slowly people started noticing. The same girl who once sat alone on a highway bench with no one beside her was now building something of her own. There were still difficult days. There were nights when she worked until morning. There were moments when things didn't go as planned. But Amara refused to quit. She remembered that night at the rest stop. She remembered how helpless she felt. And she promised herself she would never feel that powerless again. Years passed. The small idea she started with became a successful brand. Amara became a respected entrepreneur. Her company grew from one small project into something much bigger than she ever imagined. She created opportunities for other people who were struggling just like she once had. She hired workers. She helped young people learn skills. She gave thousands of people jobs and a chance to build better lives. People started telling her story. They talked about how she turned the worst night of her life into the beginning of her greatest journey. But what made Amara happiest wasn't the money or the success. It was knowing that the girl who once felt unwanted had become someone who gave others hope. One day, she stood in her beautiful office and looked around. The walls were filled with achievements, awards, and memories of her journey. She thought about the little girl who always tried to be noticed by her parents. The girl who thought she wasn't enough. And she smiled, because she finally understood something. She didn't need her family to choose her. She chose herself. And that choice changed everything. Years passed, and Amara's life became something nobody could have imagined. The girl who was once abandoned on a highway was now a name people respected. Her company was growing. Her story was inspiring thousands of people. She had built a beautiful life with her own hard work, surrounded by people who believed in her. But far away from Amara's world, things were very different for Daniel and Ruth Kibet. The family that once laughed while leaving Amara behind was now struggling. Their money problems kept growing. Bills started piling up. The comfortable life they once had was slowly disappearing. Daniel tried different ways to fix their situation, but nothing worked. One day, while watching the news, Ruth saw a familiar face. She froze. On the screen was Amara. Not the scared young girl they left behind. Not the daughter they ignored. A confident woman standing in front of her successful company. The reporter was talking about her journey, her achievements, and how she built everything from nothing. Ruth couldn't believe her eyes. "That's Amara," she whispered. Daniel looked at the screen in shock. The daughter they thought would never survive had become the person everyone admired. For a moment nobody spoke. They remembered that highway. They remembered the joke. They remembered laughing as they drove away. But now the laughter was gone. Now they realized what they had lost. Soon they started searching for her. They tried calling old numbers. They looked for ways to contact her. They sent messages hoping she would answer. The same people who once left her alone with no money, no phone, and no way home, were now desperate to find her. Malik also heard about Amara's success. The brother who always received more attention was now watching his sister achieve everything. He realized the girl he once ignored had become someone much stronger than anyone expected. Meanwhile, Amara received the first message from her family after years. She stared at the screen for a long time. Her heart felt heavy. A part of her remembered the little girl who waited for them to come back that night, the little girl who cried on that bench. But another part of her remembered everything she had built without them. Pain. The struggle. The journey. The message was simple. We need to talk. Amara looked at those words quietly. Years ago, she was the one begging for their attention. Now they were the ones looking for her. Life had completely changed. The daughter they thought they could leave behind was now the person they needed the most. The day of the reunion finally came. Amara sat in a quiet room, waiting for the people she had spent years trying to forget. Her hands were calm, but her heart was not. She had imagined this moment many times. She imagined asking them why they left her. She imagined making them feel the same pain she felt that night. But now that they were actually sitting in front of her, she felt something different. She felt tired. The door opened and Daniel, Ruth, and Malik walked inside. For a few seconds nobody spoke. They looked at Amara. The same girl they abandoned years ago was now sitting in front of them as a successful, confident woman. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "Amara, we know we made mistakes," she said softly. Daniel quickly added, "We never wanted things to go this far." Amara stayed quiet. She watched their faces. She wanted to see regret. She wanted to know if they truly understood what they had done. Then Daniel finally said the words they had been repeating since they came. "Amara, we were just joking." The room became quiet. Ruth nodded. "It was only a prank. We thought you would get upset for a little while and then laugh about it." Amara looked at them. A small, painful smile appeared on her face. Prank. That was the word they used for the night that changed her entire life. The night she cried alone on a highway. The night she wondered if she would survive. The night she realized her own family could leave her without looking back. She took a deep breath. Then she looked directly into their eyes. "A joke ends when everyone laughs," she said calmly. Nobody moved. Amara continued, "But I was the only one crying." Those words hit the room harder than any anger could. Daniel looked down. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. Even Malik couldn't look at her anymore, because deep inside they knew she was right. Amara wasn't the same girl who stood at that rest stop waiting for them to return. She was stronger now. "I spent years thinking I wasn't enough," Amara said. "I thought maybe I was the problem. Maybe I needed to work harder. Maybe I needed to become someone better so my own family would choose me." Her voice became emotional, but she stayed strong. "But then I learned something. I didn't need to prove my worth to people who were willing to leave me." The room stayed silent. No excuses could fix those years. No apology could erase that night. Ruth whispered, "We're sorry." Amara looked at her. "I believe you're sorry," she said. "But sorry doesn't change what happened. I had to build a life without you." And that was the moment they finally understood. They didn't lose Amara because she left them. They lost her the day they chose to walk away. The daughter they thought would never make it back had returned stronger than they ever imagined. Years later, Amara stood inside her beautiful office, looking through the large glass windows at the city below. The place was everything she once dreamed of. A place she built with her own hands. A place that reminded her that the girl who was left alone on a highway was still capable of creating something amazing. The walls were filled with awards, memories, and pictures of the journey she had taken. But the thing that meant the most to her was not the success. It was the people who stood beside her. Elias was there, the man who stopped when everyone else drove away, the man who helped her when she had nothing. And Nia was there, the woman who believed in her when nobody else saw her potential. Amara smiled as she looked at them. "I don't think I would be standing here without both of you," she said. Elias smiled. "You were always strong, Amara. You just needed someone to remind you." Nia nodded. "Sometimes the people who leave us behind are the reason we discover how far we can go." Amara looked around her office and thought about everything that happened. Tears. The loneliness. The fear. The night she thought her life was over. But that night wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Far away, Daniel and Ruth watched Amara's success from a distance. They finally understood the truth. They thought they had abandoned a daughter who would fail. They thought she would come running back, broken and defeated. But they were wrong. They didn't just lose a daughter. They lost the most precious person they ever had. They lost someone who had a kind heart, someone who worked hard, someone who could have brought love and pride into their lives. But they chose a cruel joke over their own child. And now they had to live with that choice. Amara never forgot the pain, but she also never let it control her. She turned her heartbreak into strength. She turned her loneliness into success. And she turned the moment she was abandoned into the moment she found herself. Standing in her office, surrounded by the people who truly cared about her, Amara finally understood. She didn't need to go back to the family who left her, because she had already found a new home. A home built with love, respect, and the person she became. My parents left me at a highway rest stop thinking I would never make it back, but that night I didn't lose my way home. I found my way to myself.